Good morning, students. We are going to start with chapter tissues, and as we have discussed in chapter cells, that a group of cells which perform a particular function is called a tissue. So, in this chapter, we will discuss what are various types of plant and animal tissues. So, first of all, what is a tissue? A tissue is a group of cells having similar structure and they work together to perform a specific function is known as tissue. Firstly, we'll discuss how plants and animal tissues are different in structure and in functioning. First of all, we'll discuss what are the basic characteristics of plants and animals. And in this way, we can differentiate their tissues as well. As plants are stationary, but animals need to move around in search of food and for other functions. Plants are of large size, like large trees, but animals are of small size. Plants require more strength because they are stationary and they need to bear environmental factors and all. Whereas animals, they need to move. They don't keep on standing at a single place, so they require more energy as compared to the strength. And plants require less maintenance, whereas animals require more maintenance. So, on the basis of these characteristics, let us see what are the differences between plants and animal tissues. Animal tissues, since animals are mobile, so they require more energy, hence more tissues are living in animal bodies, whereas in a plant body, to provide additional strength, most of the tissues of plants are dead. Secondly, animals move from one place to another in search of food, shelter, etc. Hence, they need more energy and their more tissues are living. Whereas in plants, most tissue provide structural strength. Most of these tissues are dead and can provide mechanical strength as easily as the living ones and need less maintenance. Cellular growth is uniformly distributed in animal tissues, whereas growth is limited to certain regions in plant tissues. And that is the reason that in plant body, tissues which are responsible for growth, they are limited to certain specific regions which is involved in growth. Whereas in animal body, growth is uniformly taking place. And the last one, structural organization of organs and organ system is more complex and specialized. So animal tissues are complex in structures and they are more specialized as compared to plant tissues. Whereas structural features and organization of plant's tissue is comparatively less complex, or you can say simple. Firstly, we'll discuss plant tissues. Basically, plant tissues are studied under three types. First one, dermal, that is the protective tissue, a kind of outer covering present all over the surface of the plant. Ground tissue, which is basically, you can say that is present in between the vascular tissue or everywhere in the plant. And the third type of tissue is vascular, which is responsible for conduction of various materials like water, food, minerals, etc. Plant tissues can be classified broadly into two types, and this classification is based on the division. Some type of tissues which divide throughout the life and responsible for growth are called as meristematic tissue, whereas the tissues which have lost their ability to divide are known as permanent tissues. Permanent tissues actually get, you can say, differentiated from meristematic tissues. Meristematic tissue is further categorized as apical meristem, lateral meristem, and intercalary meristem. Permanent tissue is further divided into two types, simple and complex permanent tissues, and they are later classified as parenchyma, collenchyma, and sclerenchyma, simple tissues, and xylem and phloem, that is the vascular tissues, come under complex tissue. So let us discuss them one by one. Firstly, we'll start with meristematic tissue. The meristematic tissue is a kind of dividing tissue which keeps on dividing throughout its life and helps to grow various parts of the plant. The meristematic tissues, simply called meristems, as the cells of this tissue are also called meristems, they have the ability to enlarge, stretch and differentiate into other type of cells as they mature. Means when they divide, so on division, the new cells, they get differentiated into other type of cells which are known as permanent tissues. The cells are young and immature with ability of continuous division. And meristematic cells, because they need to divide throughout their life, hence these are living cells with thin cellulosic cell walls. The cells are very active and they have dense cytoplasm because they need to divide throughout their life, so they have active and dense cytoplasm. Cells can be oval, rounded or polygonal in shape, and they have a large prominent nucleus because the major part of the cell which performs the function of cell division is the nucleus. Hence they have large prominent nucleus, but they lack vacuoles. Vacuoles are absent because this tissue is not meant for storage. So as it is not storing any material, hence vacuoles are either very small or absent. And the cells are arranged compactly, so no intercellular spaces are present between these cells. And cells are very small in size, but they have very high metabolic activity. That means very active cells. Here we can see that meristematic tissue can be classified into three types, as it is a tissue which is responsible for growth. And as we have also discussed that plants में जो ग्रोथ होती है वो कुछ स्पेसिफिक रीजन्स में होती है, तो ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ द रीजन्स वेयर दिस टिश्यू इज प्रेजेंट, इट इज क्लासिफाइड इनटू थ्री टाइप्स. Apical meristem, as you can see in the diagram, it is present at the tip of root and stem. So it is called root apical meristem or shoot apical meristem. Intercalary meristem and lateral meristem. Lateral meristem is present at the sides of the stem, and intercalary meristem is present at the base of the leaves or the internodal region. So let us discuss one by one. Apical meristems are located on the tip of the root and stem. As you can see in the diagram, the first one, at the top, apical meristematic tissue is shown here. And this tissue help in the growth of root system as well as the shoot system. Root and shoot की जितनी length increase हो रही है, that is due to the division of apical meristem. The various cell divisions along with the cellular enlargement help in the growth of stem above the ground and the growth of root below the ground. तो length जो increase हो रही है cells stem and root की above the ground or below the ground, that is all due to continuous cell divisions and cellular enlargement in apical meristematic tissue. Next is intercalary meristematic tissue. This is actually present at the internodes and at the base of the leaves. As you can see in the diagrams, internode region is the region present between two nodes where the leaves arise in the stem of the plants. So this region contains a kind of meristematic tissue which increases the length of internodal region as well as nodal region and the leaves. So intercalary meristems help in increasing the length of the stem in the region of nodes, internode and leaves. Apical meristem is increasing the length of the stem at the tip, whereas the length of nodes and internodal region is increased due to intercalary meristematic tissue. Third type of meristematic tissue, which is present at the sides, lateral sides of the stem and root of a plant, these are known as lateral meristems. And This kind of meristematic tissue helps in increasing the width or girth or thickness. जितनी thickness increase होगी stem की root की, that is due to divisions taking place in lateral meristematic tissue. And this tissue is further classified into two types, vascular cambium and the cork cambium, because basically these tissues are responsible to increasing width of plant stem. Let us have a look at these three type of meristematic tissues. Apical, present on root and shoot tips, responsible for linear growth of root and shoot. Intercalary, present on leaf base and node, and responsible for growth of plant from leaf and nodes. And thirdly, lateral meristem, present on the sides of stem and root, and responsible for increasing diameter of stem and root, that is thickness. Now we'll discuss how these meristematic tissues are different from permanent tissues. As we have discussed that meristematic tissues are basically tissues which are responsible for growth of the plant. So these cells continuously divide to form new cells, whereas permanent tissues, as the term suggests, are permanent. That means they have acquired a definite shape, size, and the division ability is lost by these permanent tissues. Hence, continuously dividing cells are present in meristematic tissues, whereas cells do not have ability to divide in permanent tissues. Meristematic tissue cells are small and isodiametric, whereas permanent tissues have variable shaped cells and of variable size. Meristematic tissues have thin cell wall made up of cellulose. Permanent tissues, cells of permanent tissues may have thin or thick cell wall. In meristematic tissues, quite prominent large nuclei are present, whereas permanent tissues have small nuclei. Vacuoles are absent in meristematic tissues, but large centrally located vacuoles are generally present in permanent tissues. Intercellular spaces absent in meristematic tissues, whereas intercellular spaces are present in permanent tissues. Metabolic activities are very high, as these cells are quite active in meristematic tissues, whereas permanent tissues have low metabolic activity, as they have lost the ability to divide. Hence, most of these tissues actually they are dead. Whereas most of the cells of meristematic tissues, like all cells of meristematic tissues, are living throughout their life. Inorganic inclusion absent means cell wall have basically the primary cell wall made up of cellulose, whereas permanent tissues have some other substances deposition on their cell wall to make it thicker. Cells are simple and undifferentiated in meristematic tissues, whereas permanent tissues have differentiated cells which are formed by meristematic tissues. It's a kind of simple tissue in structure, whereas permanent tissue is simple and complex of both type. And one important thing you need to remember, most of the cells of meristematic tissues are living, whereas most of the cells of permanent tissues are dead. I hope meristematic tissue is clear to you all. In our next lecture, we'll discuss about permanent tissues. Thank you and have a nice day.